Welcome, everyone. I am delighted and grateful that you made the time to be here today. Purpose is something that provides for us a guiding light, a beacon that fills us with hope, and it, of course, creates for us meaning. And it exists at the heart of our capability to be resilient. And it is the foundation that keeps us grounded when the storms of life shake everything that we take for granted. The nature of this session will be meditative and reflective, so be prepared to do some deep introspection and reflection of your own. In preparation for the work that we'll do, I would like you to allow yourself to come to the present moment in the best way you know how to. Maybe by recalling a meditative state or a peaceful presence or a quiet moment, a restful image. I will give you a moment. For me, it always starts with the breath. Taking a deep breath in and out. And another deep breath in and out. Noticing everything around you. Noticing what you see, what you hear, and what you feel in this moment. Being here. That's right. I would like for us to start this session just with a reflective practice. And I would like you to take the time and just reflect on the following 3 questions. What is your intention for this session or for today? What will you accomplish in this session? And then the really important question, how does this support your reason for being? Reflection often takes us down interesting paths. Making time for reflective thinking creates space where we can expand our thoughts about our reality and our experience of the world. Just consider for a moment where we are. We are living in interesting times. The last few months have shown that life and our circumstances are unpredictable, and what we consider to be normal can be taken away from us at any moment. And it becomes natural to rally against the world and express our frustrations and anger, because at the heart of this crisis are the losses that we experience. A loss of understanding, a loss of freedom, a loss of security, and much, much more. Elisabeth Kubler-Ross and David Kessler are researchers that spent years focusing their research on the stages of grief and mourning, as was initially proposed in Kubler-Ross's book on death and dying. And the stages of grief and mourning are universal and are experienced by people from all walks of life across many cultures. Mourning occurs in response to the loss of a close partner, a friend, and even a disastrous loss of something that defines our identity. Like we have to face the loss of a world that up to now defined our normal. In the 5 stages of grief model, there are clearly defined stages we can expect in loss. The first stage is denial, and in that stage, the world becomes meaningless and overwhelming. Life often makes no sense, and we are in a state of shock and denial. And often we wonder what will become of us. Then denial makes way for anger. We start raging against the world. We feel the injustices. And if you've been watching the news and the social media lately, we can see that anger as people are starting to question how our government is handling this crisis. And as a matter of fact, as how governments around the world are handling this crisis. But soon enough, we will enter the bargaining stage, where we will start yearning for what was and how we can bring it back. And we have to get used to the truth that the world has changed forever. And it doesn't matter how much we want the world to return to the state it was before 2020, it will not. Which leads us to the next stage of grief, which is depression. And in this stage, we experience prolonged negative feelings about our loss. Soon, we will have to deal with the fallout of this COVID-19 crisis. We will have to deal with unemployment, with lack of resources, with difficulties, and the eventual hardship. We will struggle with loss of hope and energy. And we may even be caught up in a cycle where we are unable to see ourselves moving forward. And then we'll get to the fifth stage, that of acceptance. And we will adapt to the new normal. And we will start building lives in a world that over time will be our new normal. David Kessler recently journeyed beyond the 5 stages of grief. And he formulated what he calls the 6th stage, meaning. And he proposes that in this stage, we focus on moving forward with hope while still honoring that which was lost. After each of us moves through our own cycle of loss at our own time in the coming months, we too will turn to meaning as an essential tool in building resilience. As coaches, we can expect and help our clients to move through their own cycles of grief and growth. And it reminds me of a quote by the author Susan Elisabeth Phillips in her book Breathing Room, where she says, "I finally figured out that not every crisis can be managed. As much as we want to keep ourselves safe, we can't protect ourselves from everything. If we want to embrace life, we also have to embrace chaos." And I think what she means with this statement is that life will inevitably present us with crisis and turbulence. And we cannot control it. We have to embrace it as part of existence. Now, I don't know if it's a consequence of getting older or if it is the result of trouble and crisis, but I've noticed that in recent times, I've spent much more effort thinking about more profound existential questions. Questions like, why am I here? What is my purpose in this world? And, of course, what is my reason for being? And maybe these questions are presenting themselves to me because on some level, I understand that my ability to deal with chaos and crisis depends on the hope that I have of perseverance and the sincere belief that I have something of value to bring to this life, a purpose. So let's do a little introspection today. Take a small voyage of discovery and see what answers reveal themselves. The Stoic philosopher Seneca wrote, "Let us prepare our minds as if we'd come to the very end of life. Let us postpone nothing. Let us balance life's books each day. The one who puts the finishing touches on their life each day is never short of time. And what he so elegantly say is that if we continue to live life to its fullest in this moment, we will end up having a life lived well. And the Emperor Marcus Aurelius supported this, and he wrote in his Meditations, "It is not death that a man should fear, but he should fear never beginning to live." And an interpretation of these words are that sometimes we are so consumed by what we expect to come in life that we miss out on the life that we have here and now. And before you know it, it's over. The author Franz Kafka wrote, "The meaning of life is that it ends." And he reminds us that time spent in this place is temporary. I believe that we have to use this time we have to create a life worth living. To live a life with few or no regrets. The author and palliative nurse Bronnie Ware writes in her book The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying, and she lists the most common regrets that were shared with her by patients in their last days. And the top 5 regrets she listed, and she said, number 5 was, "I wish that I'd let myself be happier." Giving yourself permission to be happy. Number 4, "I wish I'd stayed in touch with my friends." Often when we are consumed with the busyness of life, it is very easy to let go of close relationships and close friends. Number 3, "I wish I had the courage to express my feelings." How often do the people closest to us not know how we feel about them? Number 2, "I wish I hadn't worked so hard." Looking back over a long life, at the end of life, that must be an especially difficult regret to deal with. Knowing that you spent so much time just focusing on work. And then the most important one, "I wish I'd had the courage to live a life true to myself, not the life that others expected of me." And this is something that happens often to us. We live a life and we try to live up to the expectations of others. We are trying to focus on creating an image that our parents would be proud of, that our friends would be proud of, that a close partner would be proud of. And somewhere in the process, we forget ourselves. And the interesting thing about this list is that the biggest regret that people have is not following their own path. The great teacher and mythologist Joseph Campbell said, "If you can see your path laid out in front of you step by step, you know it's not your path. Your own path you make with every step you take. That's why it's your path." I personally believe that the greatest work of your life is finding the path to your true purpose. And your ultimate expression of creativity is to design a life of meaning. And I'm inviting you today on a journey to craft and discover your purpose. And of course, to live a conscious life filled with purpose. What we will do in this session today is to take you through a process in which you will have the opportunity to see how you can find for yourself and coach the processes of firstly coming to presence, then how to find purpose, how to create practices for living a purposeful life, and ultimately how to focus on purposeful outcomes to support your coaching outcomes. We will start and we'll focus on finding purpose for ourselves, and then we'll move on to the context of purpose within teams and business. So let's start. A purposeful life is a life lived in this moment, aware of what it brings and savoring all of its aspects. Unfortunately, most of us live lives of busyness, where we vacillate between constructed memories of the past or anxious and fearful projections of the future, and we miss out on this moment, the present moment. And to return to this moment, sometimes we have to relearn what we've forgotten, and that is how to live fully in the present. And I'm going to teach you a very simple process today, and it's a technique that I learned from my teachers Robert Dilts and Stephen Gilligan, and it's something that they call the coach state. And I learned that this was a state that I must frequently access just to acquire the habit of being present. And if you practice this often, you can return to a life of being fully here. So let me teach you this simple technique. We use the word coach as an acronym. And what I'll do is I will facilitate you into this very simple exercise. So I want you to give yourself permission to journey with me in learning this very simple exercise. So sit back, relax, close your eyes, and take a deep breath in and out. And just continue breathing, maybe just a little deeper than you normally would. And the C in coach state is for centered. And centeredness is that place where you fully inhabit your body, as if you belong in it, fully and authentically. The O is for open, open to whatever may arise, whether those are feelings, emotions, or thoughts. For these arise to teach us. Allow them. See them with curiosity. The A is for aware. Aware of your body, aware of your senses, aware of how you feel inside. And the second C is for connected. Connected to all your resources and faculties, whether those resources are within you or around you, knowing that you can always trust your skills and capabilities. And then we come to the H, which is for you to hold this space, the safe space within which you are the best version of yourself and for those you welcome into. And then take a final deep breath in and out, and just allow yourself to settle in this moment, fully present. That's right. And you can open your eyes and just come back to the present moment. Having purpose has often been compared with having a compass, a true north. And having purpose gives you a sense of direction. And if you follow it, it will lead you. The psychiatrist David Viscott, in his book, Finding Your Strength in Difficult Times, a book of meditation, states, the purpose of life is to discover your gift. The work of life is to develop it. The meaning of life is to give your gift away. And what he does there is he summarizes our creative journey to purposeful living. And I will restate it very inelegantly, but it simply boils down to discovering your purpose, developing your purpose, and living your purpose. So what I want to do is, as you are sitting there listening to me, let's just do a little quick exercise. And you might want to write this down, or you can just make a mental note of it. Whichever is easier. The choice is yours. Without overthinking it, complete the following sentence for yourself, using less than 10 words. And that sentence starts with the words, "It is my true life purpose to." And just write down what comes to mind. And I'll give you a moment. And it can be this easy to define a purpose for your life. And the question you might have is, can it be that simple? So let's explore this a little more with another exercise. And in this exercise, we're going to create possibility to just detect on a conscious and unconscious level what it is that we want. So the exercise that I want us to do is this exercise, what I most want to create in my life. We're going to start, and the first thing that you are going to do is you're going to set your intention. Now, intention is a really important part of any exercise that you do in a coaching setup, because intention frames for you how you will experience the exercise. If I had an intention, for example, and I said, this is just a waste of time, the way that I experience the exercise is going to be very different than if my intention was framed positively. And I'll give you an example of a positive intention. I am really curious to find out what new things I can learn about myself in this exercise. So whereas the first intention was a negative one, the second one is more generative, and it becomes the lens through which you view the exercise. And of course, the results that you will get from the exercise is very much dependent on your intention. Then the second step in this exercise is to connect with your coach state. And you can simply just take a moment and come to presence and just be in this moment. And then what I'm going to ask you to do is the following. You're going to ask yourself the question, what I most want to create in my life is, and then I want you to just write down whatever comes up. Don't overthink it. Just write down what comes to mind, even if it seems insignificant to you. And then, once you've written that down, I want you to think about an image or a color that goes with that. And then, if you are a more kinesthetic person, you might even want to say, and a movement or a gesture or a feeling that I have in my body is, and you just make a note of that. And then I want you to allow yourself to just breathe in that creation, that image, that movement, and just let it settle in your body. And then you go again and you say, what I most want to create in my life is, and you write down what comes up for you. And it is possible that it might be the same thing, but hopefully it is something new. And then you go through the process, and an image or a color that goes with that is, and a movement, breathe that in. And then you go through it again. I will facilitate you through this process and you can follow along. So let's start at the beginning. And I want you to set a positive intention for this exercise. And I don't know what your intention is, but I know my intention is about being really curious what this exercise might teach me. And I'll give you a moment to just think of your own personal intention. And once you have your intention, I would like you to just come fully into the present moment. Allow yourself the luxury of being here right now. And then what I want you to do is to follow along with the questions and just make notes on each of the questions that I ask. And I'm going to start with the first one. What I most want to create in my life is. And an image or a color that goes with that is. And a movement or a gesture or a feeling in your body that expresses that is. And then just breathe in that creation, that image, and that movement. Breathe it in into your body and just let it settle there and just savor it for a moment. And then let's go for a second iteration. What I most want to create in my life is. And an image or a color that goes with that is. And a movement or a gesture or a feeling in my body that expresses that is. And then just breathe in that creation, that image, and that movement. And let it settle in your body. And then let's go for another iteration. What I most want to create in my life is. And an image or a color that goes with that is. And a movement or a gesture or a feeling in my body that expresses that is. And just breathe in that creation, that image, and that movement. And let it settle in your body. knowing that all these new creations, images, and movements will serve you in the exercises that we do going forward. And just maybe wrap up what you are writing down or thinking of in this moment. And I will unmute everyone.
Yeah, I would just like to share. It was actually surprising to see what showed up versus what I thought would show up when we first went through the questions. And I think it came from the first step of setting the intention, because before we started and before you said set an intention, I must say that I was quite closed up, and I was like, oh, I want to do other things while I'm listening. And I actually stopped everything I did and just connected with my heart, and that was my intention. And it was just beautiful to see that intention opened up something to come up that I didn't think would come up. So thank you.
Oh, that's wonderful to hear. The nice thing about setting an intention and coming to a present state is that you consciously and unconsciously allow your own awareness to just expand. And often when you give yourself the opportunity to expand your awareness, there are many things that come in from your unconscious mind that allows you to pay attention to that our rational mind often excludes us from.
Yeah, so I'm going to share, just because I've also put it in the chat. So when I went through the first round, it was all about a relaxed state, because I live in a very busy state. And then the second time around, it was about connections with others. Yes. And the third session was about supporting others and giving back with the knowledge that I've experienced.
That's great. Thank you very much. But this is a really interesting exercise that if you wanted to learn how to do this for yourself, this is actually an exercise that I do often, just to remind me that my idea of what I want changes as I'm changing as a human being. And of course, as a coach, when you are working with your coaching clients, this is going to be the same for them. And often people hang on to things that they wanted a long time ago, and they never consider the fact that they are changing as human beings, or as career people, or as leaders.
I just wanted to share my experience as well, because the first round, it was very much to the outer world of having other people being satisfied and happy. And it was interesting with the reiteration. Yes. It came much more to myself and where I want to be. And it was interesting that I thought, well, first iteration, what are all these repeats about? But I'm glad you've done it, because it does rethink and bring it closer to the inner self, which I really enjoyed. Thank you very much for that.
Yes. You are touching on something that I didn't specifically want to bring in our conversation today, but I think I will share the little anecdote. Part of my personal growth as a coach, one of the things that informed me, and what I'm about to tell you is not supporting any kind of religious or philosophical framework here, because I originally started looking at this practice from the point of view of mindfulness. But one of the things that I learned along the way was the very beautiful mindfulness meditation, which is called the loving kindness meditation. And the way that it was taught to me by a Buddhist teacher, and I'm not a Buddhist at all, you started with a very simple phrase: may I be filled with loving kindness. May I be well in body and heart and mind. May I be safe from inner and outer danger. And may I be happy, truly happy and free. And in the exercise of that, you would repeat those phrases for yourself 3 or 4 times. And then you would go to the next level of that meditation, and it goes to, may my loved ones be filled with loving kindness. And you would repeat that same rhyme for them. And you would repeat it 2 or 3 times. And then you would go to, may all beings be filled with loving kindness. And you would repeat the phrase for them as well. And I thought this was a really interesting way to do a meditation. And then I did some research on my own, and I looked at some of the other meditations that come from that traditions. And I saw that the structure always starts with the self, then it goes to the people close to you, and then it goes to everyone else. And the lesson that I took from that as a coach is that if you cannot be strong for yourself as a human being, as a leader, as an employee, you can't be strong for anyone else. And then once you are strong for yourself, you can be strong for your family or for your team or for your business. And if all of you are strong together, then you can be strong for the rest of the world as well. And whenever I engage with clients, new clients, I always start with them at the center. And I say to them, it is really important that we work with you as an individual and get you to be strong for yourself. And then inevitably I run into one of the strong businessmen that says, yeah, but you know, I've got a whole team that depends on me. I've got a whole organization that depends on me. And then I tell them the story and I say to them, when was the last time that you flew on an aeroplane? And can you remember listening to the safety briefing? And at some point in the safety briefing, they're going to say to you, in case of something going wrong, oxygen mask will drop from the ceiling. And then the first thing that you are supposed to do is to put on your own oxygen mask, and then you help someone else. Because if you start by helping other people putting on their oxygen masks, you are endangering yourself, and then you cannot help anyone else. So that's a principle that doesn't only apply within the Buddhist meditation structure, but it also applies in real life.
Yeah, thank you, Francois. I think that was beautiful, that prayer or that meditation that you just quoted. So I don't know where we can find it, but it was just beautiful. It immediately just presents me. Yeah, so my question was just around how vague we are. So when I say what I want most into creating my life, how specific do we really have to go? Or is it more about being like having a big concept like being happy, and then just getting in touch with that feeling at first, and then through the coaching sessions you'll explore what that looks like or how it will show up for you or indicators. But I was just wondering how detailed we have to go when we do this exercise.
One of the guidelines that I gave in the beginning, and this is the really important thing, is don't overthink it. Just ask yourself the question, what I want to create most in my life is, and just blurt out what comes to mind. Don't think about it, because if you start thinking about it, you're inevitably going to be going to things that you think are important to others. And
it's so funny, Francois. Oh, sorry to interrupt you,
yeah.
But it's so funny. Like I did the exercise and it was wonderful, and then my intellection kicked in, and it was like, how deep can I go with this? Like, how can I overthink this?
Yes.
Thank you.
And the wonderful thing is, and you probably experience this with your coaching clients as well. We deny ourselves so much. We don't permit ourselves to be happy and strong for ourselves, because we're continuously trying to push other people to happiness, other people to performance, and we lose ourselves along the way. And when you turn that situation around and you start doing this kind of work where you do self-inquiry, self-reflection, in the beginning, it's almost like you cannot believe that you are permitting yourself to grow. And I often, when I work with people, I do, in my coaching, I do a lot of hypnotic work, and I encourage people to connect with their unconscious mind as if it is another self living in their body. And what is interesting over time, if you really acknowledge the unconscious part of you, you start getting so much information back. And you become whole in a way that is really interesting if you start practicing it. And I don't want to go all the way down that road today, but there's a real power in listening to yourself, figuring out what is good for you as a human being. The best life purpose statements are not the corporate sounding ones. I have to be a success by age 55 and I need to be retired by 60. That's not a purpose. The absolute best purpose statements are things like, it is my true life purpose to help other people find their potential, which is my life purpose. It is my true life purpose to be happy. It is my true life purpose to really value the people close to me. So those are very simple statements, but they are deeply profound, especially when we move to the latter part of the session, where we're going to start talking about how can you make sure that your life is a life of purpose, because then you align every single thing that you do with that purpose. A popular representation of the quest to finding purpose is the one that you see on the right hand of this slide, and it often pops up on internet searches or internet articles. And it is a good way to start thinking about your purpose, and it reduces the quest to finding your purpose to 4 basic questions. And those questions are: what does the world need? What do you love to do? What can you do well, or what are you good at? And how can others reward you? And to be honest, I've edited this question, because the question as it's commonly depicted is, what can you be paid for? Now, this is a very simple process that allows thinking on the clues of what your purpose might be. And if you look at this diagram, the questions appear in such a way that you can that you may think that you can choose the order you can choose the order of the questions to ask yourself. Now, I like to do it in the order that I listed on this slide. And this order eliminates the option to start with the money question. I have found whenever I allow my coaching clients to work with purpose, they inevitably start with the money question. But the problem with the money question is that if you ask that first, it really reduces the possibilities that will lead you to your purpose. So I like to start with the question, what does the world need? And this question carries with it 2 implications. And the first implication is that there exists a world which has a need, and presumably a need that you can satisfy. And this world can be the world as it is, or it may be a world of your own choosing, a world that you want to be a part of. And then the second is that there is a world that needs things or skills or services or gifts, and you are the only person that can provide that. And the magic is in figuring out what those things are. So in answering the question, what the world needs, you can say, I'm looking at the world as it exists, and I've got these skills and gifts that I can bring it. Or you can say, I am going to create a brand new world. And in that world, I'm going to create skills and offerings and gifts that world needs. And it's actually not that alien a concept, because if you look at the way that we approach marketing, in marketing we create worlds all the time. We create audiences that are ideal for us. So the perspective that you can take is the world as it is, or a world that I want to create and be a part of. Then the second question is, what do you love to do? And another way to phrase this can be, if there were no constraints on you, how would you choose to spend your time? And this question is about finding those things that draws you in. It may be things that you are passionate about, or it could be something that brings you enjoyment or deep meaning. Then we get to the third question, and the third question is, what are you very good at? Now, over time, we build skills and capabilities, and some of those things turn out to be strengths, which are things that we can do better than our peers can. And it normally are those kinds of activities that others will rely on us doing it for them. And then finally, and I always like to ask this question last, how can others reward you? And like I said earlier, the original question centered around the concept of what can others pay you for doing. But it's very important to understand that not everyone attaches meaning and reward to money. So the incarnation of the question that deals with money was a difficult one for some to answer. And I changed that by substituting the word money with reward. And that suggests that you receive something in return that has value to you, whether that's a monetary value or not. So what I'm going to do is, I am going to walk you through one cycle of these questions. And I'm going to ask you for each of the questions, just write down the top 2 or 3 things that immediately comes to mind. Once again, please don't overthink this. Just set an intention for ourselves for this exercise as well. And just make a mental note of what that intention is for you. And it is fine if it's the same intention that you used earlier. And just make it a positive intention. And then maybe because we had a little break, it will help you to just settle into your chair and just allow yourself to come fully to this moment. Maybe just with a simple deep breath in and out, and being here fully. And then I'm going to ask you to write down just 1 or 2 or 3 things to the question, what is it that your world needs? The world that you want to be a part of. Okay, and if you're still busy writing, just maybe finish the sentence that you are busy with. And then let's go to the next question. What is it that you really love to do? And it can be anything. It can be something small. It can be something big. It's up to you. Think of those things that you are really passionate about, that makes your world comes alive. And then just finish the sentence that you're busy writing in this moment. And then let's go to the next question. What is it that you are really good at? The kind of things that other people ask you to do for them. The kind of favors that other people ask of you. Maybe the kinds of things that you are really proud of doing yourself. And then just complete the sentence that you are writing. And then let's go to the last question. What can you be rewarded for? What is it that someone would pay you money for or trade favors with you for? So what skill do you have? What capability or gift do you have that others are prepared to pay you for in some way? And it could be money, it could be something different. It could be recognition. It could simply be the joy of doing something well. Okay, and I'm going to ask you to just finish the thought that you're busy writing at this moment. And then just have a look at all of the answers that you provided to all of these questions. And just for a moment, give yourself permission to see how these things that you wrote down, how they support or are related to the purpose that you wrote down earlier. And just notice what you notice. If anyone is willing to share or ask a question, you're very welcome to do that.
Hi, I'm putting myself in this. So I'm very grateful to see that what came up for me in the first exercise, it's my life purpose too, and I just wrote support others to inner freedom. Yeah. And all of the things that came out in this exercise had something to do with that, so it feels aligned, and I think it didn't come in one year. took many, many years, I think, to get here. So this is a fantastic exercise to help us along if we are still battling with parts of it.
Yeah. And you bring up a really good point there, because one of the things that's very important to understand is that life purpose is something that emerges over time. And like anything else, once you start paying attention to it, it starts revealing itself. But not all at once. There's a wonderful story that I read a while ago about the student who wanted to find his purpose. So he went to his teacher and he said, so how do I find my purpose? And the teacher says to him, well, come with me. And he took him down to a river, and there was a group of people panning for gold. And his teacher said, that is purpose. And he said, what do you mean? He says, some of these people will start panning for gold, and they'll immediately find it, and they will leave the river, and they will go and live their life out in wealth. Other people will pan for years, and over time, they will accumulate enough gold that they can leave and retire. And then there are others that will pan for gold all of their life, and they will just never find it. And that's the same thing about purpose. That some people will find their purpose immediately, other people will work at it for a long time, and it will gradually reveal itself. And then there are others who will never find their purpose. And it's not a bad thing. You don't have to have a clear understanding of what your reason for being is to exist in this world. I would argue that knowing your purpose and living a life according to your purpose creates a lot of richness and meaning to being here. But it's not required. I did a workshop last year, and the one lady said to me, but she doesn't know what her purpose is. And I said, okay, that's easy to do. Just pick someone else's purpose and use it as your own purpose. And she said to me, are you crazy? I said, no, try it. And the nice thing is if you pick someone else's purpose for your own and you start living according to that purpose, you very quickly find out if that purpose fits you or not. Okay, so if you absolutely have no idea of what your purpose can be, I will go with the counter-intuitive approach, and I say, well, just pick someone else's purpose and see what happens, which is an interesting experience.
This purpose also comes from experiences and wanting to share the lessons from an experience.
That's a good question. What experience does for you, it reveals and uncovers for you purpose. Often an experience that pushes you in a certain direction that you want to go is an experience that reveals for you what your purpose could be. Whereas sometimes you have an experience and you just say never again. And that's the kind of purpose that's the kind of experience that pushes you away in a different direction. And this is also the thing about developing your awareness of how your purpose plays out in the world, is because you start understanding what it is that you can start saying no to. And I'm going to cover that in a few minutes from now. One of the things I also want to share with you is that you're not going to work through these questions once. I would suggest that you move through it over and over and over again, because by working through it iteratively, you will expand your awareness of your answers to each of those questions. And over time, it's going to become clearer and clearer to you on where your purpose is pulling you towards. And it's very important to find, if you are going to go on this journey, it's very important to find a purpose that resonates with you. And then, as your purpose emerges, allow yourself to live in a way that moves you towards it. Because the sooner you start living your life of purpose, the sooner you will have the benefits of meaning, of joy, and of fulfillment. And it's not necessary to perfect your skills and your abilities to live a life of purpose. But while you are learning, just do it anyway. So you don't have to be perfect. And what I want to do now is I want to share with you 2 practices that I've adopted from the Stoic tradition that will help you to create a life of purpose for yourself. And these are very simple. These are 2 daily habits that I've embraced in my life, and it's created a big change for me. And I've introduced it to a number of my coaching clients, and this is something that they've said to me is the one thing that moves them forward the quickest. So if you want to learn some really good techniques, perk up those ears, because here they come. And the first habit is just a very simple meditation. And if I talk about a meditation in the Stoic tradition, a meditation is actually a little bit of reflection combined with self-inquiry. And this habit is really simple. It can take you 5 minutes in the morning. And it's as simple as this. You start in the morning somewhere, finding 5 minutes for yourself on your own. And you start by coming to presence in any way that works for you. And then the second thing is to set an intention, a positive intention that will describe for you how you want to experience that day. And that becomes the frame of how you will see that day and experience it. And then you ask yourself 2 questions. And the first question is, what things will I accomplish today? And often some of my coaching clients, they will list 5 or 6 or 7 things they want to accomplish. And I said, no. Just come back to 1 or 2 things that is really important to you that you want to accomplish today. And once you know what that 1 or 2 things are, you ask the really important question. The really important question is the following one. How does doing this or accomplishing this support my purpose? And if there is no clear answer, you are probably trying to do something that is going to move you away from your purpose. And you may need a few days of practicing this to start seeing the efficiency and the outcomes that it creates for you. But this is something that I would encourage you to try. And then the second part is the evening reflection. And this is about finding 10 or 15 minutes for yourself in the late afternoon or the early evening and to do this reflection. And what's very important to understand is that this reflection is not about beating yourself up. This reflection is about looking at your day from a point of view of what can I learn from it. And it starts with the very familiar steps of coming to presence, setting a positive intention, and then asking yourself a couple of questions. Now, I've got a list here, and you don't have to ask all of these questions. You can pick the questions that work for you. But you could start with a question, for example, did I do my best today? Always remembering that the best you can do is just your best. The modern trend of saying I gave 110% today, that's just not possible. And no one can expect more of you than your best. So it's a simple question to answer. Another question that I like is, did I use my time wisely today? So in the time that I had available to me today, did I do the right kinds of things that gave my day value. And then one that I often, I do a lot of leadership coaching, and it is very important for leaders to live by example. So interesting questions that leaders can reflect on, we all can reflect on, is, did I treat people well today? And then the second one that supports that, was I the role model for others that I wanted to be? And then taking the lessons from those answers that you want to take forward into tomorrow. One that's very important to me, and it's a recent addition to this list, is the next question. How did what I accomplished today give me more time tomorrow? And that speaks to having the mindset of constant innovation, always trying to make life better. And this is a concept that I've discovered a while ago when I was reading the blog of Tim Ferriss, who authored a number of really good self-help books. And he wrote in his blog about finding that one decision that if you make that decision, it will eliminate 100 others. And I took that concept and I said, okay, if I bring this back to my own personal accomplishments, how can I do things, or how did I do things today that by doing them, they are giving me more time tomorrow? Because for me, my most precious resource is my time. It's the one thing that I can't increase. I can make more money, I can have more clients, I can have more friends, but I can never have more time. So this is something that is very close to my heart. How can I make the best use of my time? And then we get to the really important question. How did what I accomplished today serve my purpose? And often what's going to happen is in the morning meditation, you might set out something for yourself to do, and you just don't get around to it because there's other things that are more urgent, there's crises that occur, and you get distracted. And then in your reflection in the evening, it is important to focus on those things that you didn't plan for and find out if those things still served your purpose or not. And it's very simple. Everything and anything that you do has the effect of either bringing you closer to your purpose or taking you further away. And ideally, over time, what you want to do is you want to consistently move closer to what you see your purpose to be. And then we get to the serious learning part, and that's the very last question on this reflection. If I could have today over again, what 3 things could I do to make it even better? Again, there's a presupposition in there that you had a good day. And even if the day didn't feel as good as you would wanted it to, you still acknowledge that it was a good day. And then you learn from it and you say, so if I had this day again tomorrow, what are the 3 things I could do to make it even better? And notice, I'm not trying to beat myself up. I'm not trying to say there are things that I did that I shouldn't have done. I'm just focusing on what could I do better. Because if my intention takes me to having a better day every single day, pretty soon you're going to have all great days.
I just want to say I love the questions because it's so positively framed. It's not, taking out the whip and scanning the day for what went wrong and what we did wrong. It just holds so much more love and compassion. I always say, we can't shame ourselves into healing.
Yeah.
And almost like just saying, okay, that's okay, that's what I've done, and how can I do better tomorrow, with no judgment. So I just wanted to say that's beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that feedback. And something that I will share with you is that I've recently completed an assignment where I was assigned a cohort of very senior leaders, and I was supposed to help them with executive and leadership coaching. And what was really interesting to me is how many of them are absolutely collapsed into themselves as human beings. They are so used to looking outwards and looking to serve other people that they forget about themselves along the way. So instead of things like strategy, instead of talking about things like decision making, I spent the vast majority of my time working on these kinds of things, helping them develop that positive self-image, having the ability to build themselves up in such a way that they could become strong for themselves. And, often when we start talking and we think about executive leadership coaching, we think, okay, well, I don't think I'm up to it because I haven't got that strategic mind, or I haven't got that detailed senior leadership skills. And in a vast majority of the cases, you end up working with strengthening the person underneath because they have those skills. They just don't know how to look after themselves. And if you adopt these kinds of practices where on a daily basis you set yourself an accomplishment that is aligned with your purpose, and every day you reflect on your day from a point of positivity and gratitude and the intention to make it better, you can very rapidly build up your own self-image, your own strengths. Within days, you start noticing how this strengthens you as a human being. The problem is that you can always do more, or you can do just enough. An interesting thing that I'm observing that's coming out of the COVID world is that New Zealand is actually moving to formalize a 4-day week, because some of the interesting research that's been coming out of a number of European countries is that people working 4 days a week actually accomplish more than people working 5 days a week. So sometimes if you give yourself the space to do less, you're actually more effective at what it is that you do. I sometimes think, and I don't want to disparage, there's this absolute focus on working hard and working long hours. And I do believe that if you don't pay attention to yourself in that process, you can destroy yourself as well. So I would say you can let go of the guilt and just do enough. But that's a personal opinion.
If I may come in.
Absolutely.
I mean, what really impressed me of this whole session now is the congruency between what you say and who you are and the way you present it. And that is, for me, the essence what is happening here. How did you become integrated, or how did you become the person you are to encapsulate what you're teaching?
That's a very easy question to answer, and it's lots of failure. It's lots of trying to please other people and understanding that I'm not served by pouring all of my energy and all of my thoughts into others. And I think over the last few years, it's been very much around believing and investing myself in the practice that if I cannot be strong for myself, I cannot be strong for anyone else. Often when I suggest this the first time, to people, there's the tendency to think, but that's a selfish way of looking at the world. And I say, no. It's actually exactly the opposite. It's a selfless way, because by becoming strong, you can serve everyone much better. One of the things that I started noticing is, as I started letting go of pretense, as I started letting go of all these notions that other people are more important than me, I started noticing that I could live to be authentically myself. And by being that, I'm starting to find the places and the spaces in the world where I can live out the purpose that I have. I just quickly want to talk about one or two other things, and that's the other things are the notion of, but what about, I'm working in an organization and they have their own purpose. And the first thing that I want to mention to you is that a lot of people often confuse vision with purpose, and it's not the same thing. Vision is a long-term view about how will you accomplish your objectives as a company, whereas the purpose of the company is their reason for being. And there is a very subtle difference between those two things, because the one is achievement oriented and the other is a way of being. People would say to me, but if I now work at the company, they've got a purpose for the company, and I'm working in a team and the team has got a purpose, and then I have my own purpose. What happens if these things clash? And I said, okay, well, the ideal thing in the world is that your purpose is aligned with the purpose of your team, and of course that your team's purpose is aligned with the purpose of your organization. But if you wanted to take a purpose-based approach in an organization, it's very important that you start with the individuals. And often you can work in a team of people and you don't really know the people that work with you. You don't know what's important to them. You don't know what they love to do. You don't know what they are really good at unless it touches your work in a certain way. And what I've found is, in working with teams, is you take every individual through the kinds of exercises that I've been doing with you today, and you let them share what their purpose is. And you let them share what they think they are good at, what they are passionate about, what they like to be rewarded for. And by getting to know your team members better, you can also start seeing, but you know what? My purpose overlaps with the purpose that this team member of mine has. And I never suspected that in the world. And then as a team leader, you could probably look at all of your team members, knowing what it is that really makes their souls come alive, and decide, how can I phrase a team purpose in such a way that I not only harness all the energy that these people are bringing, but also see how I can support them in achieving their purpose. And then, of course, on a macro level in the organization, if you can do the same, then you are going to get an organization that has alignment with purpose from the top level, through the teams, through the people. And then you might ask, okay, but what about those people that they just show up for the money? They don't love what they do, but they work for a salary, and that is all they do. And in my point of view, that is absolutely fine. We also have to be realistic. Not every single person is going to be able to live out their purpose in the ideal way that they want to. But what they can do is they can find a job that pays them And by receiving that money, it enables them to follow their purpose in their own way. So if you're working with people and you can't see a clear link between the achievement of their purpose and the work they do, they might just be taking another way. There are many ways to achieve your purpose. There's a question she just asked, the difference between vision and purpose. Vision is a strategic statement that is focused on the objectives of an organization. A lot of organizations will have a vision that says, we want to become the leading service provider in insert your industry of choice. And some people might even have a stronger vision, says we want to be the leading service provider or the best or the mightiest by 2030. So typically a vision is very much focused on an outcome that you want to achieve. Whereas purpose can be very different. Because an organization can have a purpose simply to make a difference in the world. And that purpose doesn't necessarily have to be the same or similar to the vision at all. Because the vision drives you towards performance. Your purpose tells you what your reason for being is. Why do you exist in the first place?
Just a thought on purpose and a person's role in a team or in an organization. Just a thought that came to mind is, in a sense, purpose, and you can tell me if you agree or not, your purpose can be linked to either your role or your position. Mm-hmm. So if you're in a situation where you are a salesperson and that links with your purpose, then that will be your position. But then you can also, your purpose links with your position, but then you can also purpose, you might be a salesperson, but your purpose might be people recover from whatever. And so that then your purpose will connect with your role, which would be different from your position. Do you agree with that?
Can I say to you what came to mind when you started using that example? And it's actually a great one. So, for example, as a salesman, let's say I'm a salesman and I can have the vision of becoming the most successful salesman in the history of this company. That can be my vision, and it's performance driven because I can clearly see how I progress against that. But my purpose can be to bring joy to people. So through being a great salesman, I bring a lot of joy to people, which is slightly different from my vision of becoming the best salesman. I wouldn't entertain the how and the what here. I'm just keeping an eye on the chat box as well. The how and the what in traditional strategic speak would be more the difference between vision, mission. Because vision is typically what your long-term view is for the organization. And then the mission explains to you what will you do to achieve that. And then if you sort of go into your business models, your business model will explain how you would achieve that. That's my perspective on the world. If you look at the literature and the research, the concept of an organization having purpose is a very recent occurrence. In reading about purpose, the real thing around organizations having a purpose, it's really something that's come to my consciousness in the last 5 years. And I think it's sort of emerging from a lot of organizations. There's a lot of organizations that are suddenly starting to take up causes about reducing consumption in the world, about global warming. And the moment you start thinking about causes, you are not in traditional business anymore. Now you are trying to add a level of meaning to what it is that you do. And that's where you bring purpose into organizations. So, Amani, I know you work a lot on the strategic level. I don't know if you have any observations around what I just said.
Francois, I can just absolutely agree with what you're saying. And I think both perspective, also important to keep that in mind, to understand, to know that, to be aware of that.
Yeah.
Organizations are really moving into the purpose space, and really understand. There's a lot of literature also on that at the moment, and it really gives meaningful life on a personal level and on a macro level. So yeah, absolutely, you're spot on.
If you are thinking about coaching people around purpose, these are probably the 4 core things that you want to focus on. And the first one is to get in the practice of coming to presence. Our clients are often so caught up in injustices that happened to them in the past, or problems that they experienced, which is in the past, or they are thinking about things that they have to accomplish next week or next month or next year or next quarter, that they are almost never in the present moment. And life can only be experienced in the present moment. So if you want to work with purpose, you really have to teach your coaching clients and get them to develop that ability to come to presence, so that they can learn the habit of being present. And there's lots of things that I could share about you. Being present makes you a better listener. It makes you a better communicator. It makes you pick up on details that you often miss if you are thinking about the future or the past. So there's lots of benefits in just being present. Then the second part of purpose coaching is leading people through a process where they can find their purpose. And like I said earlier, this is an emergent process, but it's a simple process. It really is about equipping your clients with the ability to do self-reflection, to build the kind of habits that will promote their focus on their purpose. Because the other thing that I wanted to mention is if, let's say, for example, someone comes to you and say, listen, can you please do this for me? If you are living a purpose-driven life, the first question you should ask is, by doing this for this person, is it going to bring me closer to my purpose, or is it going to take me further away? And if the answer is it's going to take you closer to your purpose, it's an easy thing to say yes to. But if the answer is no, it's going to take me further away from my purpose, then it's probably something you should be saying no to. People love to overload people that are helpful, and you often end up doing things that don't take you forward in life. And if you authentically live according to your purpose, you understand what are the things that you are supposed to say no to. Okay, and then the third part of purpose coaching is firstly enabling your clients to understand the practices of living a purposeful life. And it's those 2 practices that I shared with you, the morning meditation and the evening reflection. And what I often add in there is just good, simple principles. And I say to my clients, you also have to be aware of the organism that you are living within. So your body needs to be fed good food, it needs to be exercised, and it needs to sleep. If your body is not healthy, it's very difficult to live a purposeful life. Okay, and I can talk lots about that. And then the last thing is, once you've worked with a client and they have defined, or their purpose is emerging through the exercises that they are doing, they have a solid practice of morning meditations and evening reflections, and they acquire good habits around exercise, food, and sleep, then it is about keeping them aligned with that. And I often would start a coaching conversation, and when we get to the contracting part and we start talking about what the outcome of the session would be, we would talk, we would find the outcome, we would negotiate about it, and I will never move forward unless I've asked them the question, how will achieving this outcome serve your purpose? And you're probably going to have to do that 2 or 3 times with your client before they start seeing, okay, you know what, if I really want to move forward with the goals that I want for myself, I need to consider how it serves my purpose as well. So in short, those are the 4 dimensions that I use in purpose coaching, and I promise you there's plenty others that you can probably think of as you're sitting there in this moment.
Francois, if I can just quickly come in and just say, just thank you for what was absolutely a great practical session. I think every one of us can take something away. I'm certainly going to apply. Remember, you referred to this the meditation, the reflection. You briefly referred to it before, and I actually it was a nice way, because I can understand how it can add value by repeating the same thing, focusing on your purpose and clarifying that you actually forming a new habit, and which is what so many people, so many of us struggle to do. So thank you so much for that. You've been a rock in this whole process for us, and today again added so much value. Thank you very much, and go well.
Francois Flores again. Yeah, this whole thing, and Bedine also mentioned it on the mind coming in the way. I'm busy with a journey also, the Gaia journey with Otto Scharmer at the moment on staying in the moment and how do you practice on staying in the moment. Yes. But being a very rational thinker and my mind just dumps in every now and then. How do you go into meditation and presencing and keep your mind from constantly bombarding or undermining that moment?
Yeah, you're asking a really interesting question, Floris. I've done quite a bit of research in terms of the kinds of practices that are available around meditation and coming to presence, and there generally is 2 main categories. There's the dynamic meditation or active meditation, which typically takes the format of a guided visualization or a self-hypnosis script. And a lot of people that experience a lot of noise when they're trying to come to presence, it is a really easy way as a gateway to take them to a point where they ultimately can then come to presence for themselves without the necessary interruption. The meditation or the coming to presence techniques that a lot of us are familiar with are very much in the Eastern tradition, where you seek to clear the mind and you want to reduce the amount of thoughts, or you want to focus your thoughts on a specific mantra or expression. And that takes a lot of practice, because especially with us, with the Western mind and our way of living, we are struggling against many years, and some of us struggling against many decades of conditioning. And if you think about it, from the moment that you enroll into kindergarten, your value is definitely measured by your rational thinking. And as good human beings, what happens is we start focusing on what other people measure us on, which is our rational thinking. So you condition yourself to the extent where you almost forget that there's this quiet meditative part about you as well. And the technique that I shared with you, the coach state, was really a practice that was very, very effective to me. And I learned it first from Stephen Gilligan, who's a psychologist, and he said to me is, because the coach state, it literally is something that you can do for a minute. And he taught us that you go and you do this in the beginning 17 to 20 to 30 times a day. Every single time that you think of it, you go to coach state. And by doing this repeatedly, you start habituating your own brain to form very strong neural pathways around that state that you go into. Over time, what you find is that you become so used to go to that state that you can even just do it on an in-breath and an out-breath, and you're there. And then you just spend time there. The issue is if you start sitting down and you start quieting your mind for 15 minutes, it creates the space for a lot of noise. But if you can do something that brings you to a state and you habituate it, you can then start spending more and more and longer time there. So that might be an option to try.
I wonder if I could add, because I have a beautiful mind, and I do love to honor my mind, and most of my strengths are strategic thinking, talents, and strengths and stuff. So a process that I've found is to also do something that I could dump what is going on in my mind. So if I have a lot going on, I find it very hard, or it takes me a long time to get into a meditative state. So I use, what's her name, Julia Cameron's morning pages, which is when you wake up in the morning and you just write free writing, and you basically just dump. I always say you skim the crap thoughts and the repetitive thoughts off the surface, and then it just allows proper clear thinking to arise through the day. But there is a channel for it, because I find if I try and bypass it, or I don't acknowledge it, or I don't sometimes allow it, and I don't mean the monkey mind, I mean like really using that constructive thinking muscle that we have, use it in a constructive way. If I don't allow that, it throws a little bit of a tantrum, and it comes back with a vengeance. It's also beautiful because through the writing, the free writing, the insights may come up, and that it automatically brings me to a calmer state to sit down now and say, okay, now I'm open for the clarity to come in. I don't know if that would help.
I've got another beautiful technique for you that you can use. Image streaming is a technique that was developed by Dr. Neuworx, and it's a way of connecting to your unconscious mind, whereby you describe the images that your unconscious mind feeds you.
Actually, I want to just make an observation in response to what Chris said, and you've been talking. When I said earlier that the morning meditation and the evening reflection is great for building habits, I was referring to that basic neurological concept where whatever you repeat becomes stronger. So you build new networks, you form, you strengthen existing networks, and actually and this ties back to what you said about how Western minds always want to rationalize things and want to understand things, and Flores also mentioned that by doing the exercise, and it doesn't really matter which exercise, and it doesn't really matter if you get it right in the beginning, because our minds tend to wander, and that's why a lot of people stop mindfulness meditation, because they feel I can't get it right. But if you can sort of accept that as part of the learning process in the beginning, every time you're doing it, and I love the practical tools that you're sharing here, you are actually strengthening the network between the rational brain, and I put it in lay language, the rational brain, the prefrontal cortex, and the emotional brain.
Yes.
So whenever something happens during the day, when something happens that upsets you, here's an automated emotional response or reaction to it. And what these exercises really do, it strengthens the links to the rational brain.
Okay, we lost Mani there. An interesting point that Mani is making, and I'm going to go back all the way. There was a Canadian psychologist, Donald Hebb, and he formulated a theory which was called Hebb's theory. And he said that neurons that fire together wire together. And that's the underlying basis for what Mani is saying now. But when I was studying with Dr. Neuworx, he was always fond of saying, but remember that neural networks formed for one purpose can be used for other purposes. And it goes back to what Flores was asking, is if you have got these neural highways in your mind because you've been using it over and over the years through your rational thinking, you tend to process anything new that comes in through those same neural pathways. And you start treating any new information or any new problem that comes in the form of your old problems. And that is, to an extent, what causes us not to adapt to new things and new problems and new issues. Sorry, Mani, you were cut off there.
Yeah, for me, it's just, and I'm saying it in general, because if we can just not make such a big thing out of meditation, but just understand that the value will come if you just commit and you just persevere. And like you're saying, it doesn't have to be months. It can be. There's been research and quite a number from large universities like Stanford and Harvard, which showed that within 8 weeks of starting around 20 minutes of mindfulness and meditation per day, after 8 weeks of doing that, they can see a structural change in the brain on the fMRI. Within 8 weeks, there's a visible. Never mind, what the functional changes are, but there's a visible change. So that's really encouraging. It's really something we're missing out if we don't engage in it and persevere in it.
And of course, all of that is supported by good nutrition, good rest, sleeping, and exercise. One of the connections that we don't always make is that, and I'm not talking about being a gym guru, but just walking for 20 to 30 minutes a day increases the blood flow to the brain significantly, because your brain needs about 20% of the resources that your total body needs. And if you keep on feeding your brain with good nutrition and you sleep, a lot of recent research focused on how the cerebrospinal fluid at night, when you're sleeping, it actually washes through your brain and removes toxins.
Oh, interesting. Well, you mentioned that the fact that your brain uses 20% of your of the resources. The prefrontal uses 25% of that 20%.
Yeah.
So just supporting what you're saying, to get proper nutrition and proper rest.
I can just add something small on the sleeping. I'm absolutely with you, Francois, on the sleeping. Mm-hmm. And I found an app, a sleeping cycle, that actually measure how deep you go into it. So it's great to see how much deep sleep you had during the night. And unfortunately, it also measures my snoring, but that's
and of course, what's happening, just to add to what Floris is saying, is that a lot of these new smart watches actually monitors. If you've got an Apple Watch or if you've invested in one of the smart watches, a lot of these watches actually measures your sleeping patterns as well. And we are living in an incredible time where there's so much information available to us, but the onus is also on us to start using it to our own benefit and learn from it. Floris, I'll just add one other thing. In that little exercise that I gave you on what do I want to create in my life, what we do there is we engage your thinking, but we also engage your visual mind, your imagination, and of course we engage the somatic. And if you make a habit of every single time that you think about something or evaluate something or problem solve, and you bring all three of those dimensions in, you're also going to find that your highways are going to start converting to regional roads and ultimately to footpaths, and some of them will disappear entirely because you are bringing in a totally new way of experiencing your thinking.
Fully agreed, Francois, but let me give you my example. When we started with the body embodiment of the thinking, I felt so stupid that I thought to myself, this is now really the limits of being in contact with myself. So just that feeling block you totally, and you stand there and you say, okay, what is my body presenting at the moment? And you go through the exercise and just my mind says, this is not for real. This is a person standing on the other side, totally esoteric, and I'm not into esoteric things because my mind brings me back constantly to the rational logic thinking. So and that's my problem. I block myself going exactly into this integrated environment of mind, body, heart. So yeah, it's just an experience.
Yeah.
Can I just say, it's so interesting that you said that, Floris, because I find with so many people, like part of my check-in when I check in with a client, I would ask them what is their heart connection. And most of the time they look at me as if they considering and thinking about their heart for the first time in years, or they actually don't know where their heart is or where their heart space is. And it takes a couple of sessions to do a check-in. It's one of the check-in questions: what is your heart connection on a scale of 0 to 100? And just that, sometimes I say to them, physically put your hand on your heart and just guess what your heart connection would be. But it's the most foreign concept sometimes for people, and yet there's so much energy there and wisdom there, and sometimes I find bypassing my mind, a way to bypass my mind is to be in my heart space and answer from my heart space. So it's just interesting. And like when I grew up, I very much was walking head. Like I'm sure I didn't have a body. At some stage I said to someone, I have no consciousness of my body from my neck down. Yeah. And it took me, I did a lot of work to just be in my body, feel my feet on the floor. And I just thought that heart connection one is also maybe a useful check-in every morning to get in touch with the body.
I fully agree, Beline. And it's interesting. We teach the Pestalozzi model, which is heart, mind, heart, body. And it's actually, the problem is that when I'm in my mind, I keep my mind going. When I'm in my heart, I can get my emotions flowing. I can really get my heart on the table. And when I do things, I do things. The crux here is to get the three aligned, to say, okay, I do not feel well. What does that do to my mind? What does that do to my body? Or I'm really excited. How do I show that with my body, with my mind? So it's interesting that yes, the three is clearly defined and you can address them. But to get those three aligned and expression with your body when you're happy, your mind is pumping adrenaline, or other way around, it's just, that's what I've got problems with. So it's very interesting, and that's my journey at the moment.
I'm really grateful that you guys stuck around. I often keep my webinars open at the end of it, because I find that a lot of the interesting stuff comes out in little conversations like this. So thank you very much for contributing, and I'll see you next week.